It's 2022 WNBA Draft Night. We are here to talk with Jonathan Kolb, Sandy Brondello about a very exciting night in New York Liberty history, followed by everyone you've come to know and love at The Next, led by Jackie Powell. This is Locked on Women's Basketball.
You are Locked on Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we are really excited to be here. This is the dawn of a new era at Locked on Women's Basketball. We are going daily, and that starts tonight with a really important night in the WNBA, the 2022 WNBA Draft. Jackie Powell is here, of course. Jonathan Kolb, Sandy Brondello, welcome to you both. Thank you for helping us to inaugurate the program.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm really hyped up after that intro, by the way.
It's hard not to be, right? I always end up listening to it. So I want to talk about this draft, and the place I want to start is with that 5th overall pick and Nyara Sabally. And so my first question is just locking in on her. A lot of people thought that she had potentially the most upside in the draft. I know it's sort of a cliche to talk about, this player was high on my draft boards, but I'm curious, just Jonathan, for you, where was she on your draft board and how excited were you when it fell this way?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, I also speak in cliches, but I think her ceiling is incredibly high. She's somebody that if she were healthy all year, I think we'd be talking about even higher than where she was selected in this draft. But for us to have the opportunity to select her is really special. I think her skill set and really the combination of skills is really rare. To be able to move as quickly and as agile as she can at that size, but still have that explosiveness and ability to punish defenders at the rim, I think is it's unique. And so whenever you have the opportunity to select a player of that caliber, especially at the 5th pick, you have to look really hard at it, and that's what we did. And we're incredibly happy that she was there for us.
Yeah, I'm really curious about when it comes to Sabally, how much of a concern it is, that she has that knee, that she's injured a couple of times.
Yeah, we've done a lot of homework on Nyara's health. We're comfortable with where she's at. I think this is a pick for the future. This is somebody that we're going to work with to get her body right. And this is something where I think you've seen we really key in on patience and we really key in on development. I think Jocelyn Willoughby is somebody that's an example of patience. And then I think you can see development in people like Dee Dee Richards, development in Michaela Onyenwere, people like that. I think you should look at this pick like that, where when she plays, I think we're going to be really excited about her. And I think fans will be for a really long time. And so we don't want to be short-sighted when you're picking this high in the draft. We want to think long-term.
Sandy, we've known each other a long time, and I know something that you have always emphasized is how much and how important it is for your bigs to be passing. So when I saw that Lorelaj Cubaj was coming to you, that was the first thing I thought of. I think she was north of 4 assists per game. How exciting is it to see a player, a big, who comes in ready-made with that skill? It's pretty rare, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely say that, and that's that's one thing. I think the staff, all of our staff has done a lot of great work, and this is a player that we, if Sabally wasn't there or someone else we liked, that we're considering in that first round. I mean, so we followed her. We like her relentlessness on defense. We really like that part, but her ability to facilitate, that's kind of rare, and we think. She's going to keep developing on her offensive skills, but having a post player that can set great screens and make the right passes for easy baskets to get our shooters open. I think, like I said, we're just super excited for, how we've ended this draft tonight.
And so Sandy, I want to bounce off of that question and talking about both Nyara and Lorelaj in that, what type of people are you all getting with these 2 picks? I mean, we spoke to Nyara on the draft Zoom, and she talked about her immediate connection with you.
Yeah, look, and that's key for me. I really enjoy obviously getting to know these players one-on-one, because bringing in the right player really does matter to us. But everyone I interviewed was just fantastic. It really was a great draft class. But yeah, that connection's important. I want them to feel comfortable. Our goal here is to make them the best player that we can possibly be. And yeah, we did have a really good connection. I spoke a little bit of German. I'm not great at it, but we got some things that we have in common there. But just excited, like I said, just to work with a player of her caliber. And we just think she has so much upside. And we're going to have patience with it too, because we know if she can be healthy, I mean, she would have been a top 3 pick without a doubt. But yeah, no, so it's good. Look forward to getting to know her more now.
Sandy, she described you as super cool. So I don't know if that was about getting more playing time or what, but that was just,
I think
her,
it must be the
that trick.
Australian thing, Howard. I don't know. I am super cool. What are you talking about?
I'm here to report. That's all.
Oh, okay, good.
So,
that's good feedback. I wonder if all the others thought that.
So I am curious in terms of your ability to bring her along a little slower. And Jonathan, I think you can speak to this really well, that the team is at a different stage in terms of its roster development, in terms of what you guys are looking to do, whether it's the win now portion of it or the fact that there are some players who you have addressed other holes with. Do you see her as someone who is filling more of Steph Dolson's time on the floor when Steph is off? Is it something where you're looking at her as a Natasha Howard understudy? How does she kind of fit in that way when you think about your roster as a whole?
You're talking about, was this for me? I'm sorry.
I am, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So for me, I think she's kind of one of her own. I just want to kind of say, and not as a cop-out answer, but I think when she plays and when she's healthy, that Sandy will find the spot for her. I think she's somebody that over the long term, we hope will fill in as a starter for us down the line. But I think really learning from the Steph Dolsons, learning from Natasha Howard, that's something that will be in practice and things like that. But I think on the floor over time, we hope that she could be part of our core group and part of a really winning team, down the line. So I think that's how we look at it.
I'm also curious to know about the 3rd round pick in Sika Kone. I mean, what was behind that pick? What did you like about her? And should we expect her to come over this year?
Yeah, I can start, and then Sandy, if you want to follow. No, we won't be bringing Sika Kone over this year. She's somebody that we think has a lot of upside. I think you saw how well she played recently, especially against France, and that's somebody that we'll keep overseas for a little bit of time and let her continue to grow. I think that's kind of been our MO of late in these drafts, especially later in the draft. You saw us take the other Marine last year. And so I think that's something we value in just seeing the upside of these players while, roster spots are tight. And so having the ability to have players grow from afar can only help down the line. So I do want to touch on her as a person as well. We talked about the other 2 draft picks and their personalities. Sika is somebody who you can hear her smile over the phone. She's somebody that is just a bright light, and we're adding another great person to the family over here.
And Sandy, just for you, this being your first draft in a different organization, I'm just wondering, what stuck out to you? What was new? What was different this time around in the experience for you?
To be quite honest, I suppose it's just preparation. It's not just about Jonathan, myself doing all the research. We have Dustin Gray, we have Ben Dull, we have, Ohima. We have so many people really with eyes on these players for the whole 6 months and years before. I mean, they're tracking them. So I feel like it's not, we're making a really accurate decision about what we think is the best player that could actually help us to reach our full potential, as well as, we talk about culture here and that's it. We want to develop a winning culture and sustainable success. And we feel like all 3 of these players can, and so that's why I said it's my first year with the New York and things are going pretty well. And now just really, looking forward to training camp and getting to work.
Well, we are delighted to have the opportunity to cover you in market. Alex Simon says hello, of course. our Phoenix Mercury reporter at The Next, who previously covered you there. But really appreciate you both taking the time on what was a busy night for you both, and wishing you all the best. We'll certainly be in conversation with you soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Appreciate
You
it.
got it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
See you soon.
See you
That was good.
soon.
Well, that was really interesting. And I just think this is going to be a fascinating chapter in New York Liberty history. Jackie, as we move beyond that, and in a minute, we're going to bring in the great Isabel Rodrigues making her debut on this show to be able to talk about what it was like to be in the room, since Isabel, unlike the two of us, did not try COVID at Minneapolis. But nonetheless, what did you think of their draft? Just as, from the perspective of being our New York Liberty reporter.
I think the Liberty addressed their needs in the present and the future. And they checked off a lot of boxes that they like to check off. And so let's go through them. So obviously they needed help in the post. I was in touch with a source over there who did say that they did like Emily Axler, but they did not have the opportunity to pick her. Mm-hmm. But what we know about New York is they needed some help in the post. And Nyara Sabally is not your typical post player. She's more versatile, and New York loves its versatile post players. Mm-hmm. Someone who can stretch the floor, someone who's a little bit quicker on their feet, really good basketball IQ, and that's Nyara Sabally.
Can I just ask you about that real quick? Because do you expect them to play a 5-out the way they did? Do you expect them to play more 4-out? Sandy was really, it was interesting how flexible she was in her intro press conference, I thought, about playing more pick and roll, which, again, plays to Sabrina Ionescu's strengths.
So I imagine that they will play 5-out, but they're not going to play the type where you have 4s at the 5 and 3s at the 4. I mean, in the middle of the game, they could do that depending on matchups, but they're not going to start that way. Walt Hopkins was very bullish on how he started games, and that he played smaller to start. I don't think Sandy will do that, but I think she will leave the door open if, let's say, they want to get some more shooters on the floor. Okay, well, sub Rebecca Allen in and leave Natasha Howard in with her. That's an option. But is that how they start the game? I'd be very surprised.
So, and I want to bring in Isabel in a minute too here, but just when you look at what was necessary for this team to compete, we now have essentially a full sense of what they did in free agency, what they've done in the draft. I know you have a piece that, obviously go to thenexthoops.com. Always read Jackie Powell everywhere she is. She's a Bleacher Report. She's written in Slams, SI, you name it. Obviously, always. There's a reason I set the Jackie Powell alarm, because you should always read her. But, from this perspective, this piece coming, like, are you calling this the Liberty getting from 12 wins last year to where they needed to be, or as much as they could be in this offseason?
I think they are setting themselves up to be a playoff team. That's where I think they're going here. And I think you need depth inside and outside. And there clearly was not enough depth or size inside. That's what they've addressed. And with the trade that they made with the Seattle Storm to get Lorelaj Cubaj, it also checked off other boxes they have, which is they like versatile bigs who can pass. They like players who play defense and play defense hard. And she checks off that box.
So before, Isabel, we come to you, I am just going to very briefly pay some bills, and then we will get into what it was like to be live inside that room. First place we're going to start is with Bet Online. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs. Well, I will also tell you that they have WNBA odds, and they had NCAA women's basketball odds. And that is important, whether you're betting on games or not, that there is an equality when it comes to wagering, because that affects eyeballs on the sport, period. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting, playoffs, and more. Head to the website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. So after we talk to Isabel, we're going to pay another bill. But first, I want to hear what it was like to be in that room. So Isabel, I'm bringing you in. Let's see. I don't have you on screen. I'm not quite sure what we're doing. It could be on my end. Oh, she's signing off and back on. It could be the Wi-Fi as well. While we're waiting, let's go ahead and talk about Built Bar. It is the time of year that many people have given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not me, because I'm eating Built Bars. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you are missing out on one of the best Built Bars in terms of taste. There's cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, not that imitation chocolate. It's low calorie, high protein, 130 calories and 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein in just about every bar. Coconut almond, white chocolate cookies and cream, if you're into that sort of thing. They're all delicious. So go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. And tell them Grandma Myrna sent you. So as we await Isabel, let's just get into some of the top of the draft, okay? Because this was in many ways very predictable early, and then things got crazy in a hurry. So, I just my initial thoughts about Rhyne Howard, and I wrote a piece at 538 today about her. But to me, I see this so often. You get the consensus top pick, and then suddenly she's the consensus top pick for so long that, let's talk about what's wrong with her. Let's talk about what's missing. I remember when Sabrina Ionescu was the consensus top pick in 2020. And there were a lot of people who were saying, suddenly maybe she's not fast enough. Maybe she's not able to do the things you need her to do to be a star in the WNBA. And to me, it was just the silliness. It was just pure, people are looking for a further debate. Anyone, by the way, I'm saying this tonight, anyone who tries to tell me it's not Aaliyah Boston next year, between today and the night Aaliyah Boston gets drafted number 1 next year, I'm not going to take it seriously. I just think it's silly. But, for you, was there any debate in your mind? Rhyne Howard and NaLyssa Smith, obviously a very good player too.
So for me, it was more about who was selecting at number 1. And before this pick was the Atlanta Dreams, I had a lot of questions about Rhyne Howard going to the Mystics. I did. Hello. Isabella has arrived.
Yep. Isabel Rodrigues is here. We're very excited. But hold on, Jackie, finish that point, and then we're going to get into what it was like to be live.
I'm going to try my best. It's quite loud, so I apologize if it's loud.
We'll do in between statements. All good.
Yes. So when the Mystics initially had that number 1 pick, I was doubtful that they would choose Rhyne Howard because of the concerns that she poses. And the Mystics take a very certain type of player. They take someone who is very much so a leader, someone who communicates. That's a lot of who is on their team. They take very mature players. And I just wasn't sure if Rhyne Howard was who they wanted when it came to those different attributes.
Well, it's clear that they didn't. Ultimately, they made that deal. I am going to turn to Isabel because I think she's trying to fit us in. Isabel, are you at the draft still? Are Are you still at the draft?
Yes, I am still here. Yes. It is still going on. They're still interviewing Destiny Henderson because this is taking forever.
Boy, Destiny Henderson got she sang too low. That's gonna end
Oh,
up
absolutely. No, it was yeah, I think she might have been the only name that folks like reacted to in that round. Yeah, I imagine largely because she came so late.
That was a big one. What's your biggest takeaway? This is your first live WNBA draft, right?
It is. It is my first live draft.
Well, talk to me. What was that like?
Yeah, it was definitely an experience. I think when because I watched like as much as I could previously, like remotely, and obviously watched the virtual draft. But I think the thing that really struck me about this time around was that essentially, if you weren't in person live at the event, there wasn't really a lot of like attention paid to those names in the second and third round. Sorry.
All good.
There really wasn't a lot of attention paid to those names, which I think was a real disappointment to see, especially because, we had Kathy Engelbert talking about how much she wants to increase player visibility and like connect more with the fans. And I think draft night, especially for the NBA, is a huge day. Like it's a whole event. It's like one of the most looked forward to parts of the NBA season. So I think and it goes past the first round too. And I think there's a level of respect that folks have for even being drafted to the NBA that I think is really deserving of a WNBA spot as well. And so I think that was the most disappointing thing, because I think they were reading the names out loud on the stream, but in the actual room itself, the name would just kind of pop up on the screen, and almost no one noticed, except for John Staley. I think was the only one watching the board in that room.
Dawn Staley doesn't miss a trick. But the thing about it to me that's so frustrating, and this is part of the question I asked Kathy this afternoon when she did her press conference, which is that if you look at the NBA, and I have my friend James Herbert go and look. He's a fantastic NBA reporter at CBS Sports. 57 of the 60 players are that were drafted in the NBA draft last year are still with their original teams in some form. The team or the G League team, they're still there. And more than half of the WNBA folks are not going to be there in a month. And so this is the moment, in the way that when I cover NWSL drafts, back when that league had 9 teams, it was, all right, this player, that was her moment. And I want that moment to matter. So I think the point's really well taken. And so,
I think that, and it goes past just like reading the names as well. I think I felt so bad for Ryan Howard, because like they started and half the room was paying attention, but half the other room was like not at all listening to what she had to say, and also just recognizing that this is the number 1 pick in the draft that just went. And so I think generally the WNBA has to decide what the draft event is. Is it a networking event? Is it a party? Is it a time to celebrate the league? It can't be all of those things and also be the most important night for people coming out of the NCAA.
Can I respond to that quickly? Yeah. So this is fascinating reporting that you're doing. It is absolutely fascinating, because something that we don't think about is, okay, yay, it's the first in-person draft in 3 years. This is going to be so exciting. But I don't think anyone thought about the types of repercussions that would occur not having done this in 3 years. Kathy Engelbert said this was her first in-person draft. And clearly, she and her staff have to figure out, according to you, what exactly they want this event to be. Because that is so sad that Ryan Howard was addressing a room that wasn't really present and wasn't really paying attention. And Howard, I defer to you because you've been to in-person drafts. You know what their I don't know if I should say supposed to be, but what are they supposed to be?
So they really vary. And, I've covered drafts that were at Mohegan Sun, and that had the type of scale necessary, right? But you're also in Huntersville, Connecticut instead of New York City. And so the surrounding events are different. To my mind, and Isabel's right about this, and be at thenexttroops.com. And I urge you all but, to my mind, Barclays Center is a damn good place for
Absolutely.
draft. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the NBA, but they have drafts too. Barclays Center, and they're great. And it's scope, and it's built for it. So, if the WNBA could just get a league that plays in Barclays Center, I think that would really go a long way. And I'm actually being told, that the Liberty do play there, and in fact, Josiah owns Barclays Center. So yes, that would be the thing to do, I think, to be able to have size and scope. Isabel,
I think the other, if I could describe one other thing too, I think like the other thing that was really noticeable to me just being there for media was that they're like the way that they treated players as they were coming down for interviews was just the most bizarre thing. Because I mean, I nearly ran like headfirst into Kirsten Bell when she was coming down for her interview. Like that shouldn't happen. Like she just got picked for the WNBA. She should have her own staircase, like her own.
Oh, you froze on us a little, but to your
waiting room, like she should be like away from like.
Right. No, I understand that. To take nothing away from you, but to be sure, they've done it other places, and the issue of scale has come up. We've been in the past smushed together into media scrums. To a certain extent, it's a question of having to make the most of a space. But you crystallized it really well. Like define what it is, what the goal is, and what it can be. I think that's really important. So, I just before I let you go, I just want to know, like, when you remember this moment 5 years from now, like, what's going to be the thing you think that's into your head first about being in this WNBA draft?
That's a great question. Wow.
That is a good question. I have no idea. I think just the fact that it was clear that they tried to make this like a big event. There was I was talking to I don't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking to somebody about the fact that like the room looks so professional, and it looks like there should be like a huge event happening here, but when you get down to the nitty gritty, like the league is still young, the league is still finding its steps and what works and what doesn't. And I think like as much as we want it to grow quickly and we want it to get bigger and we want people to invest in it, like it is going to take time to get these things right. And it might not happen right on the first try, but I have hope that it will happen, and it will happen better in the future.
And I love that the league is trying different things. I think it should. I don't think we can hold them hostage to expectations without giving them the opportunity to experiment. So Isabel Rodrigues, thank you. I intend to ask you that question again in 5 years. I have a feeling we're going to do it.
Yes, absolutely.
Bravo, excellent reporting, and can't wait to edit. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to turn things over now to the person who covered the team that had Tony. Maybe you could tell me this. Am I right? You guys had, or the Fever had 17. No, the Fever had 17 of the first 12 picks. Is that true?
That's close to accurate, correct. They ended up with 1/5 of the picks basically in this draft and 1/3 of the first round. So any fraction you can come up with, I'll just say, yeah, that sounds about right.
Tony East, who covers us for the Indiana Fever for us, does a fantastic job. You tell me where you are, because you're not at the draft, but you're at something that looks like a draft headquarters.
I am at the Fever draft headquarters. I have snuck over to the court while they will play, except as you can see, there's no actual court right now, just cement flooring as this stadium goes through construction. But yeah, the Fever had us in by their war room to do all their media availabilities and to see what was going on, because they've had construction going on in the stadium, and the Fever have new facilities down here. So it was very cool to see all that and see Lynn Dunn and Marianne Stanley talk after quite a busy night for the Indiana Fever.
Can I just ask, how was Lynn in the post-draft presser, and did she give her rationale for picking Lexi Hull in the first round, who I love, by the way? I just am just shocked.
Yeah, Lynn was wonderful. She came in the room, and while they were still setting up her media setup, she said "hot dog" at the top of her lungs, and the whole room shook because of the decibels of it. It was wonderful and super funny. But yeah, she did actually speak highly of the Lexi Hull pick, both her and Marianne Stanley, and a lot of it, and I think you both know why, has to do with shooting, right? The Fever were the worst three-point shooting team in the league last year. They need guards who can shoot. And this Fever team views Lexi Hull as the best shooter in this draft class. And the follow-up point that I think is very clear here is, yeah, no one really thought she'd be a pick in the top 6, obviously. Lynn Dunn said she did not think Lexi Hull would be there at 10 for the Fever to pick her with their next pick. So if they really wanted her, as they viewed her as the best shooter in this draft, they thought they had to pick her at 6, so they did. And I like you guys both thought, wow, that's very high. That's not where anyone thought this would shake out to be. But if they truly view her as this elite shooter who can shake into their rotation and change their fortunes from beyond the arc, it makes all the sense in the world to take her when they thought they couldn't get her with their next pick.
So before we get to that, I think we ought to talk about it too, and the extent to which, and I'm just curious what you think. NaLyssa Smith's a player I've had the privilege to cover in college. I think very highly of her. Is she a number one option that the Indiana Fever can build around? What did Lynn and Marianne have to say, and what are your thoughts on it?
I think they think she can be. She certainly is very polished and mechanical, I would say, with her footwork and skill, and grew a ton throughout the coaching change in Baylor this last year, which is certainly encouraging for someone heading into the pro level now that she's been able to do that. Will she be a high-level number one option? I don't think so. I don't know if she can be necessarily. I think that's going to be really close as some more Fever staffers walk right by me, so I apologize if I keep looking away from the screen.
No,
yes, I am good. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. But yeah, I think she can be, and I think the Fever are hoping she can be. But the theme that made Marianne Stanley and Lynn Dunn so into her, besides that she's obviously very skilled and high level prospect, is her energy. They thought her energy was wonderful, and she's a great big in transition, which is pretty rare, and that's what made her such an attractive prospect. And that energy is something the Fever were kind of lacking on the interior last year. Tierra McCowan, not the speediest player, not the highest energy player in the W for sure. So it's definitely a big change in style for them in the post, and I think that's where they were really attracted to NaLyssa Smith.
Now, another question I have here, and this was the second shocker, because Angsler and I will ask about Angsler after I ask about pick number 10, because as many of you know, I was very high on Angsler, but I must know they went with Queen Egbo at 10, another Nikki Collin player. What did they see in Queen as someone who took a little bit longer to adjust to Nikki Collins' new system at Baylor?
Yeah, the Lexi Hull pick, I understood it a little bit when they explained the rationale. Queen Egbo, I'm still kind of like, okay, I guess I get it. They, like NaLyssa, like her energy and ability to be mobile, and something Marianne Stanley brought up that I don't know a ton about Queen Egbo's perimeter defense and her ability to defend away from the basket, but that's something Marianne Stanley likes, is her ability to defend pick and rolls and stretch out a tiny bit on the defensive end of the floor as a mobile big. And again, they had no mobility at the big spot last year, like as low as you can possibly have. So I think that was an appealing skill for them. I don't know if that is the pick you make at 10. But again, if you don't think they're going to be there at 20, or you realize Destiny Henderson might be there at 20, maybe you do what you have to do at 10. But I was equally surprised by that one. I'm not necessarily sure how that fit will shake out, especially now that, Betty's on this team, NaLyssa Smith's on this team, Angsler's on this team. The front court is a little more crowded than it was before draft night started, but they certainly view her as someone who can be an impactful defender and another energy big for this Fever team.
More good players seems like a good thing. I
That's
think
correct.
That was a weakness of the roster last year in terms of
when you put it so bluntly, it sounds bad, but it's 100% correct. Yes,
it's hard to overstate it. I mean, and again, before Jackie asked about Angsler, who I do have to point out, she was high on Angsler early. She and I were both very high on her, but Jackie is the one who had her in her mock drafts top 4. Had her as somebody going high. So it just, I'm tipping my hat, though I'm not wearing one. But I want to talk about Destiny Henderson, because good Lord, at 20, at 20 to get somebody who, you could get hung up in the great game, in the championship game. And that's a small sample size. That isn't it to me. That is to me, this is somebody who comes with a Dawn pedigree. Dawn teaches her players how to play in the pros. This is a player who is elite defensively, who has length at the defensive end. As a guard, I just, how thrilled were they to get her at 20? How shocked were they to get her at 20?
Very. That was the one that they were the most like, wow, we couldn't believe she was available when they picked her, because I didn't ask Lynn this. This is sort of just me thinking about the Fever roster, but like they had a lot of guards going into this draft. So I thought that would be the position they prioritized the least. And even with Henderson, she might have to fight a little bit for minutes or a roster spot on this team. There's a ton of guards on the Fever already. But when the value's that good at 20, like you said, she's in the room, right? She's one of the 12 that they thought maybe would go in the first round. She's in the building. You can't pass up that value at 20. And I think she'd be a good culture fit with the Fever, aggressive defensive guard. That's something they need. And something else that, this is true for a lot of picks in this draft, because there were a lot of South Carolina picks, a lot of Baylor picks, a lot of Louisville picks. But the theme of winners was something Lynn Dunn brought up a lot as well. And we saw Destiny Henderson be certainly a winner in the NCAA tournament this year. And I think that was very appealing to the Fever as well.
I might be the only one who is not surprised by where Destiny Henderson went. But I do believe that the Fever is a very good fit for her, because her skill set is what Lynn Dunn built her Fever teams on, which is 3-and-D, which is what Henderson can do.
Wait, so Jackie, ask Tony about Emily. I don't want to keep you from that, but we can't forget to talk about Allie Patberg. So just remind me after this, okay?
Oh, so are we doing Emily and then Patberg?
I didn't pick 4. Should probably come before pick 34. Yes.
Yes. I know we've gone a bit out of order. I apologize to the listeners, but there's just a lot of shock value when it comes to the Indiana Fever. So returning to a pick that I was not shocked by, more just sad about, because I really wanted to cover Emily Engstler in New York. That was something that I was like, if she's still on the board, they have to pick her at 5. But
Indiana, I do think we get her early, by the way. I think Indiana's coming into town, I think, twice in the first few weeks. So there is that.
Okay. That there's a bright side to that. So what I want to know is, I've been very high, as Howard said. I've been high on Engstler since December. Mm-hmm. I just believed that her versatility and her intangibles were a match at the pro level. I'm curious as to, what did Lynn and Marianne like so much about her?
To steal Emily Engstler's vernacular, it was a dope pick. She used that word probably 100 times in her presser, which I loved at the actual draft. They loved that she is everything they've been lacking, not just last year, but for years. She is an awesome perimeter defender. Fantastic. I, like you, Jackie, was high on her and thought the Fever might pick her at 6. If they loved her, pick her at 4. That's totally fine. If she is that talented to me. She's a playmaker on both ends of the floor, can play high level on offense on the perimeter and defense on the perimeter, but is strong enough that if she gets stuck in the post, not a big deal. It's just a perfect fit for this roster that has 0 impact defenders. Fits very well with NaLyssa Smith too, which I think was a key part of their strategy with 2 and 4. And it goes back to every intangible that the Fever mentioned. These are the kind of things that coaches and GMs love to hype up, right? She's an energy player. She's a winner. All those kind of things are certainly involved. But I just think she's so skilled at the things that the Fever really need for their roster. She's a fantastic defender. She can handle the ball. She can shoot it a little bit. She can pass a little bit. I think she is a perfect connecting player for what this team needs. And I'm bullishly high on her fit with both Kelsey Mitchell, who, as Howard knows, because he asked the question, is a player that the Fever really want to build around, and also NaLyssa Smith. I think she'll be a great complementary piece for this team.
Oh, I agree with everything you just said there. And then I'm just curious whether you think Allie Patberg has a chance to make this roster, which to me, the fact that I'm asking you that question tells me that Lynn's had a successful draft, right? Because that was not a question. How many times have we had that internal conversation? Like, why do you cut a lottery pick? There's not 12 roster spots that you needed for the players that were there. So, the fact that we're now having that conversation, and again, I'm coming to this with a big belief in Lynn Dunn and her basketball knowledge, just as I think Marianne Stanley is a fount of basketball knowledge. I know she is, going back 50 years. So all of that said, Allie Patberg, who is a player I have a great deal of affection for, having covered her for all 31 years she played in Indiana, what are her chances of making the team?
That joke was made in the press room as well, Howard. So very good. As an IU grad, obviously, I was thrilled to see that pick come across the ticker late in the draft. Do I think she has a chance to make the team? If she had to beat out 3 or 4 players, as we've seen at IU, yeah, Allie Patberg can prove to be that. But the numbers shake out to Howard. She's going to have to beat out 10 players for a roster. But the Fever have 22 women now that will be competing on their training camp roster. Obviously, the number will be trimmed before camp even starts. But that is a lot of people to beat. I mean, Destiny Henderson's going to have a really tough time making this roster as I sort through who this team has under contract and who they're going to be signing. So I love Allie Patberg as much as you do. She was a very bright spot for this Hoosier team that for a second looked like they could push UConn before getting absolutely destroyed in the second half of that game. I don't think she ultimately has a shot to make the team, but I, of course, would absolutely love it if she did.
21 names?
22.
22. There can only be 15 players in training camp.
Yes, they had 15 under contract before the draft and just drafted 7 people. So it's going to be a very interesting couple weeks for the Indiana Fever before camp even starts.
Make sure you're following all of Tony's coverage. Tony does just such an excellent job covering this team for us at thenexthoops.com. Tony, thank you. I don't know how you did it, but you stayed on top of this draft when there were so many moving parts for this team. We'll be seeing you again soon. Locked On Women's Basketball and every day, obviously, at The Next. I want to bring in now, if I can, Matthew Walter, who had, as it turned out, a very similar first round-ish to what Tony East had. Matthew, first of all, thanks for being with us, our Las Vegas Aces reporter.
I'm happy to be here. It ended up being a very interesting and I think a good night for the Aces going forward, and really shows the way that Becky Hammon wants to play. And we'll get into it. But if I had to put 2 words, one word with a dash in between it on the Aces night, 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
Because that's what they went out and got, was a bunch of 3-point shooters.
So look, I said to Becky Hammon at her introductory press conference back in, January, do you intend to shoot more threes? In what ways do you intend to differ from Bill Laimbeer? Bill Laimbeer was the very last, possibly ever, WNBA coach who just did not think the 3 was important. And he had staff members who disagreed with him.
And I think that's because Bill Laimbeer played on the bad boy Pistons where they didn't shoot threes to save his life. They were bodying
the 3,
people.
Vinnie Johnson. We don't have to get into the MNBA. I'm just saying, there were some 3-point shooters on that team. Bill had a certain way he was going to build a team. And again, there were people who said, Bill, what is Bill thinking? He's thinking, I went 42-12 my last 2 years in the WNBA. So Bill Laimbeer, God bless him. He was somehow underrated at the end. But, that said, Becky was always going to shoot more threes. And so they were going to have to change the roster in that way. And so clearly you add Natalie Williams as general manager last week. A WNBA source informed me that she was the one in the chair making trades over this period of time and made that deal to essentially allow Las Vegas 3 of the first 13 picks. So coming into this, did you see 3-point shooting as the number one thing they needed to address?
I thought that it was 3-point shooting and they needed depth at the wing and the post position. And their first 2 picks, they answered that beautifully with all those things. Because you get Maya Hollingshed, and I've talked to Em Adler about Maya Hollingshed, and I watched her play 3 games at the Pac-12 tournament. She is a gritty, grinded out, defensive-oriented kind of player who will get you those extra possessions on the offensive boards, who will play hard and really, really good help defense. She's got toughness. I think that's, J.R. Payne's entire program at Colorado. Oh, and by the way, she shoots 39% from 3 at the 4 position.
Right.
So it's a perfect fit.
What's notable about Hollingshed, and I've had many conversations with Em about her when I was working on a mock draft yesterday. Em was encouraging me to have the Aces pick her. what's interesting about her, and I think what was encouraging to the Aces, was what you just said. That number from 3, actually, she's been working on it throughout her entire collegiate career. It's been on the exponential increase. And also, Becky Hammond stressed in her opening presser that she values those gritty, grinded out players almost much more than the most talented player on the draft board.
Yeah, and I would say I watched Hollingshead a little bit before I went to the Pac-12 tournament, but at the Pac-12 tournament, she really opened my eyes to. She was struggling in the first half of, I think, 2 of their 3 games, the ones against Arizona and Stanford. And the second half, especially the third quarter, she finds a way. She says, I'm not going to give up, even though I'm not having a great offensive night. I'm going to find a way to become valuable to my team, whether that's rebounding the ball, which she does an incredible job. She just has such a high motor. And then she hits a couple of threes, and then her whole game changes. She gets confident. She starts being aggressive, and she's a great fit because of her ability to stretch the floor. And she's got more versatility to her. And I think that's a huge advantage. And then I think the Aces got advantage of, she played in their backyard for 3 games at that Pac-12 tournament. So they got to watch her play for 120 minutes and see what she was about. And I think that really helped. And I'm guessing Nikki Fargas sat there and who was at the time was president, and said, this is the kind of kid that fits exactly what we're looking for and trying to build here in Las Vegas.
And then when you look at somebody like Kirsten Bell, what's interesting to me, and the reason why I didn't necessarily, we saw some helium from her at different points, bringing her, I saw some people had her in the top 4, and again, I didn't, people who are hostile about mock drafts, I don't, this is supposed to be a fun exercise. Everyone's trying their best and getting the best information they have. But I never really bought it was, Bell was not a great defender at the college level, and she's not a great 3-point shooter. She's a great scorer, but she's somewhere around 30% from 3, if memory serves, the last couple of years of her career. Yeah. What do you think the Aces do with her? What is she on this Aces team?
Well, and it's tough because at Florida Gulf Coast, she was a post player because that's not a very big league. The Atlantic Sun is, I worked in it briefly. It's not a big league. Mm-hmm. It's not a tall league. It's nothing like, the SEC, the ACC in that area. But Kirsten Bell, when she was at Ohio State, was playing at the 3. And I think I see Kirsten Bell come to the WNBA and playing out on the perimeter. She doesn't need to play. She can play in the post if they want to run sets to post her up against smaller guards, but she is not going to be playing naturally out of the post. And especially with, I think, just this is based on looking at the Aces roster, they're going to play 4 round 1. I think they put Asia Wilson in the middle, and we're going to play a 4 round 1 style of offense. And Kirsten Bell then can play out on the perimeter and be, an aggressive attacking kind of player, getting to the shots that she likes. And yeah, she's not a great 3-point shooter, but in the WNBA, she just needs to be able to make defenses respect it so they guard her out to the 3-point line. And I think it's going to help her on defense that she doesn't have to guard the post. She has to guard other players of her size. Yeah. And the Aces needed wing depth. They had 1 wing on their roster in Jackie Young. And that's why in my mock, I had them taking Ray Burrell, just because they needed more people who play that sort of 3-4 position, because all of their post players are more posts and all of their guards are more guards. They didn't really have a bunch of those tweeners like a Jackie Young, like a Kirsten Bell. So I think she's a great fit. She can go learn from somebody who's a little bit of a wing, but more of a post, in De'Erica Hamby, who likes to shoot the 3, but isn't a great 3-point shooter. And I think is a good, not comp, but a good person for Kirsten Bell to learn from, because they have similar styles of how they want to play with their body size and how much they want to sort of shoot the 3.
She'll be a great
Kirsten Bell also moves really well off the ball. She has really good instincts off the ball. And I think that's going to help the Aces spectacularly.
And this was brought up in Kirsten Bell's press conference, and I think is the definition of it's a small world. What award did Kirsten Bell win 2 years in a row? The Becky Hammond Mid-Major Player of the Year award. Who is going to be her new head coach? Becky Hammond. If that isn't like stars aligned, stuff had to happen, I don't know what is.
It is a fascinating small corner of the world that we've got here. I do love that. I would be remiss not to talk about the 13th pick before we let you go. And, I know effectively it's the second round, but essentially it's the first round. And Kayla Pointer just to be able to bring her in, somebody, as a defense first point guard, in a lot of ways, interestingly, almost feels like a Lane Beer pick, right? But obviously she's able to get to the rim. She's able to shoot the three. It's an interesting thing that she dropped to 13, given how hard it is to find good point guard play in this league, don't you think?
I would agree, and I think part of the reason is if you look at her numbers, she's not an efficient scorer. She is a high volume, take a lot of shots kind of scorer, which, like you said, she's a great defender. And the thing to me, because I hadn't watched a lot of her play when I started to look at her, she had a triple-double this year. She put up 16, 11, and 10 against Ole Miss. So she has the ability to do a lot of things. And again, it fills a need for the Aces because they really don't have a backup point guard behind Chelsea Gray. Raquana Williams is more of a two guard. Kelsey Plum is obviously a two. They just cut Destiny Slocum. So I think Kayla Pointer is a great fit. I think their first three picks are all just great fits because they fill backup positions the Aces needed on their roster. They fill space because the Aces were down to now with the cutting of Slocum 10 players on their roster. So all five of their draft picks could make the could find a way onto the roster with some mobility and some movement, but they all are going to be in training camp because of the fact that they had, 5 spots available. So I think you look at it and Pointer can go in and say, okay, I need to go be the backup point guard. I need to play really good defense, which is a lot of what brings people off the bench. But her ability to score like Kirsten Bell in a multitude of ways. She has a ton of abilities, ball handling moves in her bag that she can pull out to get to the basket. And like you said, she loves to get to the basket and wants to do that more, I think, than anything else. Needs to improve on her free throw shooting, but is another great fit. I do really quickly just want to touch on Asia Shepherd because three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. I know Tony talked about they were the worst three-point shooting percentage team. The Aces took the least made threes in the league last year. Three-point shooting clearly was we need to fill some people who can shoot the ball because Becky Hammon comes from the NBA where Steph Curry, who plays for my favorite NBA team, has made the world about three-point shooting. So I think she realized we can't be playing this old-style basketball. We need to go out and get people who can shoot the three. Asia Shepherd might have been the best shooter in this draft, just her capability to shoot the three. I don't know what else she brings where she might be able to make the roster, but because she knocked down almost 100 threes last year, that's a huge help to an Aces team that, again, last in the WNBA in three-pointers made last year.
I mean, I'm just saying, Bill Laimbeer, 42-12 with that style. Nobody else has been able to win with that style other than at the collegiate level, Kim Mulkey. But they are, each of them are one of a kind in their own way.
And I definitely think we will see and I can't wait to go watch a couple games and just see how drastically different the offense looks. Because I think Becky has talked about it, and it'll be interesting to see what the players say. But I expect we're going to see a night and day. They're going to push the pace. They're going to want to get down the floor quickly, transition kind of baskets. And I think she's going to bring some of what she's learned. And if you look at who the two people she's brought onto her roster or coaching staff are, they're people who coach in the NBA. And I think she's going to bring some of that NBA stuff over to the W. And I think it's going to work just because I think she's just got that mindset. She's going to make the players want to enjoy playing offense. And I think that's going to help now in pushing the pace and playing a 4-round-1 style.
Oh, you're correct. But I also want to point out that the Aces, I believe, in 2021 were number 1 when it came to pace. I was looking at those pace numbers. So Bill did have them pushing it in transition. He did, which sounds strange because of the fact that they had Liz Cambasia and Asia Wilson. But that team moved quickly because of who the guards were in Chelsea Gray and Kelsey Plum. But I think to your point, they become even, I guess, quicker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that helps because you're not running down in Cambasia as your 5. Wilson is your 5, who's more athletic and allows you to run the floor and do different things on offense because you don't have to play a 2-post lineup where somebody's got to be high and somebody's got to be low.
So before we let you go, just the final thing, you're talking about that offense. What do you think it will mean for Asia Wilson, who's never played in an offense like that, really in college or in the pros?
I think Asia Wilson is the kind of player that could fit in any offense. Yeah. I think she's just such that kind of player where she can find a way to score in whatever you're doing offensively because she's so talented and can play down on the low post and up in the high post. And the way she's grown and she's starting to shoot the mid-range a little more, and we all see the videos. If she'll shoot the three, we'll see with Becky as the coach now. But I think she'll just fit. She's an MVP for a reason. You don't stop being an MVP because a coach changes. I think you find a way to be, better because you're going to find a way to fit your game into what they're trying to do. And I think she's so receptive to that kind of thing. And, she signed her return after Becky became coach. And I think if she wasn't confident in where they were going as with fit, she wouldn't have decided to come back.
I think, I agree with that, but I think to step beyond that, I think we're going to see another level of Asia Wilson we haven't seen.
Yes.
I'm really encouraged. I'm really excited about it. Matthew Walter, you've done great work for us about the Pac-12, about the WCC. We're so glad you're here. And
I do want to say for the Pac-12 that always gets hit on for being a conference nobody watches, 3 picks in the top 10.
Man, you can't listen. I've given up too much sleep. You people out west, you have the wrong time zone, use the wrong clocks, but I stay up because that is a conference worth watching. And so I'll do it. I will sacrifice my sleep to be able to watch the Pac-12. And so you do not have to sell me. We should go, but David Yapkowitz is here, and I just want to say hi. We're going to tease a future show because Dave showed. I want to say hello. So, Dave, hi. You talked to Eric Fisher, right?
Yeah. Just wrapped up our post-draft call.
We're going to talk this week about it because we are, and I keep telling people this, we're every weekday. So we get to do this every weekday. So give me one teaser of what you got out of Derek Fisher, and then we're going to record tomorrow.
He's pretty excited about the group that they drafted, all 4 players. I think, one in particular that's a little bit interesting is Amy Atwell from Hawaii, a player, that I'm real familiar with over the past couple of years. He was definitely excited about this group, and it's tough with such few roster spots, but the way he kind of sounded was that they'll have every opportunity to make this roster.
All right, we have a lot more to talk about with that, but we're way over time. I'm so grateful to everyone who joined us on the show tonight. Jonathan Kolb and Sandy Brondello did a wonderful job. Isabel Rodrigues reporting live from the draft. Tony East coming to us live from Indiana Fever headquarters. Matthew Walter and David Yapkowitz, just great stuff. We'll get into more of it. And of course, the great Jackie Powell, who is just always a pleasure to talk.
Oh, Howard, it was an honor to sort of co-host this with you.
It was delightful. If I had to get COVID with anybody, let it, I can't think of somebody who I was more fortunate to spend time with ahead of getting COVID. We'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you all. Everyone, make sure you're following us at Locked On WBB, at The Next Hoops. Make sure you're reading us at thenexthoops.com. Sign up for our emails. We write all the time. We have over 100 reported pieces every month. And I'm really excited to be able to get into this.
Howard, quick question. How much does it cost to sign up for the emails?
Funny you should say that. Well, so emails are free to sign up for. However, if you want to become a paid subscriber, all the revenue goes to our staff. All of it. All of us. We can't stop. Look at us. We can't stop talking about women's basketball. And you can now get it for $24.99 off. In other words, League Pass will be on us. Get all the coverage and all the games signed up for a year for the next. So until next time, which will be tomorrow, I am Howard Megdal. Thank you on behalf of everyone at The Next, wishing you a wonderful night.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.